people to roll in. We had good feedback yesterday on my call yesterday. I had some people actually call me pushing back on me saying that mills would never shut down just where we're at right now. They were actually angry at me for actually saying that. I'm like, well, are you long wood or something, or what's the reason why you're angry? I could be wrong, but I'm just telling you what my history has been when people make these announcements, right?
Well, shutdown, and I think there's a difference between just a cold shutdown and a curtailment, because it's kind of the number that I've heard is it costs a Canadian mill $500,000 a week to be down, to shut completely down. But to roll back, and there's no reason to shut down completely, but there's an obvious reason why we should roll back production a little bit. And like we just said a minute ago, so don't have to shut down. You go from an 8-hour shift to a 6-hour shift. You keep everybody employed, and even if you got to pay the wages a little more, pay to keep people. Nobody wants to shut down your mill and you lose your workers and they go flipping burgers at McDonald's or digging ditches or anything they can do to get a job. But I don't think a shutdown is going to be it's too expensive and costly, and it's really not necessary. All we got to do is just get this. It's just an imbalance. The lumber market got way overbought. It got over prepared for because builders just, and we said this before, they just gave this carte blanche. Don't run out of wood at any price. Price is not an object, but really, well, are you going to pay $2,000 for a stud, or are you going to, what price are you going to cut it off? And what happened with builders just arbitrarily or just by themselves said, well, if we can't determine what the cost of our goods are 12 months out, why in the world are we going to sell a house if we can't deliver for 12 months?
Right.
So everything that's happening right now is just what we thought was going to happen 2 months ago. It's a result of builders rolling back order files and trying to wait on things like windows and EWP and rebar and cement to become more available. And they're just getting control of what's available for them. And we started this whole, when we started this thing, our very first conversation, we talked about 1.7 starts and 1.3 million completions.
Yep.
And you can start all you want, but if you can't complete them, then there's not enough EWP and windows in the world for the U.S. to do 1.7 million starts. There's enough to do about 1.4, and that's what we're going to roll back to. And we just got to get the lumber mills have just got to roll back their production to accommodate what we can finish and not what we can just throw on top of concrete slabs.
Well, let's welcome everybody in, Matt. I see everybody's coming in. Cheers to everybody. Cheers, Matt. Thanks for showing up. If you want to put up in the little bleep blopper in the right corner there who you are, where you're from, Matt and I are going to launch into our episode of Lunch with Lumbermen that we do every Thursday at 12 o'clock noon. I will guarantee you will have a great experience and leave here knowing more than you left before. Whether it's right or not, who knows, but you'll know more of something.
Fresh new opinions.
Exactly. So I see Bob. It's from Bob. Hey, Clay. Bob, hey, what's going on, brother? Dave Peters from Roanoke. Julie English from, is that St. Simon Island, Georgia? Very cool. Crystal Allen from Smithfield, North Carolina. Judy, welcome, Judy. We got John from Rochester, Minnesota. Don Humphrey from Nelson, BC. Damn, Matt, you got a lot of people coming to your show now.
I bribed the whole crew to come today.
That's awesome. Adam from Boston. Chum from over in Grand Rapids. How's it going, Chum? So we got everybody rolling in. So let's start out talking a little bit about the market. We had that call yesterday with Matt Beamer and Greg. Matt made it back. We talked a little bit about the wide basis and what's going on. And I should have been more aware of whenever the basis is that wide, all of the players in the market that get all the information first. There must be somebody. That's why that basis was so wide. Canfor comes out, makes an announcement that they're going to make less lumber one way or another. What say you, Matt, on this one?
Well, they don't have any choice. Everybody that's on here that's not a mill is probably looking at a yard full of lumber that is moving slower than they thought it would. And I think that's a perception of it's moving slower because it's so expensive. And it's just like if you've got a truckload of 2x12s or 2x4s that are $1,200, and you can replace them at $500, then you've got too much lumber. You got that lumber is too much lumber. But still, I was just talking to a guy a minute ago that lumber is still shipping across the borders. It's still shipping on trucks from mills. Mills are still shipping lumber every day. It's still going to job sites every day. It may be slowed or choked down or clogged because of EWP or windows or rebar or cement or siding or whatever the shortage du jour is of the day. But the world has not stopped consuming lumber. So the mills are going to curtail just enough to get back into equilibrium. And like we said at the beginning, before you and I were discussing at the beginning of the show, that our very first conversation was the spread between 1.3 million completions is all we can do, and 1.7 million starts is what we'd like to do. The lumber industry is perfectly able to supply 1.7 million starts. We know that because we've shown it. We've supplied lumber not only for 1.7 million starts, but the industry was able to accumulate extra wood in storage for at a 1.7 million pace. But still, if you look back for the last 2 years, we've been around 1.1 to 1.4 completions. That's all we can do. That's all there is for the whole housing project, not just lumber and cement, but for the whole everything. 1.4 is all we're going to do. So the lumber industry needs to roll back production to a comparable volume of supplying 1.4, 1.5 million homes, and not 1.7. It doesn't mean we got to have major shutdowns. It just means just a gentle rollback in curtailments and just chill.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think one of the things is we have a lot of people on here, analysts and so forth, and it seems everybody. I like looking at both sides. I like what's good for a mill. I like what's good for a consumer, and I like transparency. But just because a price is at one level doesn't mean people are going to shut mills. And I don't think people should be afraid of that, but they should also be looking at what's going on. Greg Riley made a good point yesterday. He actually made it. Greg did a pretty good call on the top of the market. He basically made a comment yesterday that we probably have stopped going down, if that makes sense in most items. I mean, would you agree with that on most items? Because what I'm seeing is today I went back to look at some 8-foot studs from a mill. They were gone because I asked them to list them because their home center business picked up again. So we're starting to see things like you were talking about a month ago about when we get back into the do-it-yourself time period, that things may start picking up again. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and we're here. It's just last year do-it-yourself was big because it replaced vacations. This year do-it-yourself hasn't been replaced by vacations. It's been delayed by vacations. Just the priority for this year for the do-it-yourselfers that were big last year was getting out of town, going to the beach, going to the mountains, taking a cruise, taking a trip to Disney World, whatever they want to do. And those things are done. Now the kids are back in school. The stay-at-home stay-at-home protocol is still in place. So people are standing around the yard. It's 90 degrees. It's still summertime. There's a lot of good weather left. And so every deck that wanted to get built didn't get built last year because we're out of product. Now you've got more product available, lower prices. There's more incentive for do-it-yourselfers to be active in September than there was through the whole pandemic last summer. So I just think the do-it-yourself market is gonna kick back in. It's probably not going to be a long thing. As far as it's just going to be a weather. It's going to be a weather thing. We're going to be good with DIY till daylight savings comes in November, and the days get shorter, and it's going to chop off. But I don't think we've got the lows in the market. I think we're not going to see the lows till October.
Yeah, so I could see that. So interesting thing is I always think things can never go lower, and then the next week comes, and I'm like, my gosh, did you see what those things traded at? One of the things that we saw is a lot more. We had a lot of the sellers on our platform yesterday were retailers that were always traditional buyers, right? And they were selling below some of the quote unquote mill prices, right? And I gave feedback to some of the mills on here, and they're like, well, I can't believe that or whatever. But it is. It's just people are moving through inventory because they have so much. Greg and mentioned shadow inventory, and that term was started out 6 months ago. Nobody really believed there was shadow inventory, but there are some ports that you have to tell them now exactly what you're bringing in because they're full. There's some reloads in some places that aren't taking any new business because they have people or non-traditional people in them. There are some people buying land next to their places that never bought lumber before, multifamily people that are now taking that on themselves and buying their own lumber. So we're seeing lumber put in all little bitty places all over the place. Is that what you're seeing too?
Yeah, there's something else that's going on too. Is builders are really being more proactive about trying to buy mill direct. And the mills are traditionally have not wanted to sell builders because I think their perception was they were kind of high maintenance. And you think about a builder buying direct, they want to know, like, I need 113 pieces of this, and I need 200,000 of this, and I need 1,200 of that, to the exact pieces. But builders are kind of revealing that they're not that specifically picky, unless you're talking about job site delivery for one home. But multifamily builders are really getting in the hunt of realizing that they can buy carload quantities, particularly off the exchange, and not have to feel like and the mills can sell them without having to feel like they're breaching their
Yeah, look at
trust
we have a lot of large builders on here that that buy straight trucks and straight cars, and now they're asking us to find them reloads so they can put stuff in. And that's just the way the business is going to, and we're not hiding that fact. That's just transparency, and that's what happens in a market as it becomes more healthy. And I mean, a lot of these builders are getting on because they were going through 2 or 3 different touches before it came to them, and they think that they can save some money this way, or at least.
Yeah.
Matt, you and I talked about it. We have people that you and I have talked about that have been in the business for 20 years that have outsourced their power and their buying because they were afraid to give bids or they didn't know how to counter people.
Yeah, they didn't realize that was even available.
Yeah.
But it's really kind of one of the things that I've learned the most this year since the pandemic is the amount of the lack of communication or transparency that the lumber dealers have given to their builders, and it's probably because the builders just didn't think it was available or didn't feel like they needed to have it available. They were just satisfied with what they knew. And now the education aspect of the pandemic has really just opened the eyes and minds and ears and possibilities for a lot of people.
Let's bring up the 2x4 chart. Let's start there and let's start digging through a few numbers here. So the 12-month 4-inch composite, it looks like it's still unable to tip its nose up yet. Matt, what's your thought here?
Too much wood. I mean, that just shows you that everything that the buyers are not buying and the sellers are not selling. It's just, I used to ask people, say, what made the market go up today? More buyers than sellers. What made it go down? Less buyers, not enough buyers, or more sellers than buyers. But that this period of the year is typically from May until the end of August is typically a liquidation period for people holding lumber and a completion period for home builders they spend more time drying in and completing houses, getting ready to sell for the first half of the year. So this is typically a period of lower demand anyway until the end of August. The FDPs are just showing this uptrend because of what happened, mainly because of the waiting of the last couple of years of what happened in the summer. But typically it's a down period from May till the end of August. And in my experience, the market has a possibility of making its bottom either in late August or late October, one or the other. But the best uptrend in the market, the most dependable uptrend, is from October to March. So my expectation is we're going to just fumble around here, like Greg was saying. The market's going to feel like it's trying to make a bottom. You're going to have reasons for it to make a bottom because prices are low. Mills are going to do some curtailing, trying to adjust back a little bit. But that's not going to change the reason why the pipeline's clogged. That's not going to make windows just show up all of a sudden and EWP show up all of a sudden. We were talking about EWP before we got on. Like why doesn't there's 7/16 OSB everywhere? Why doesn't EWP loosen up? And the reason is EWP or I-joist producers have a specific product that they can buy to get their stamp. They have to buy a specific mill product, a specific grade. They can't just arbitrarily go out and buy 2x3s and cut grooves in them and 7/16 from anybody. They have to have a specific mill stamp from a specific region, and they can't deviate from that. So it's just taking them longer to catch up because they're just still. It's not that there's a shortage of it. It's just there's such a backlog of demand for that product. They're catching up, but it's just a slow process.
Let's go over to Southern Yellow Pine from the Sunday, August 22nd publication. And that now, when I look at that, just sitting here, I say to myself, it looks like this has the most potential to move up because is this a season of treating? Is this treating accumulating, or what do you think?
Well, there's a couple things going on. What we talked about this last week was that the truss business has really just skyrocketed. Floor trusses, people that were in the floor truss business or not in the floor truss business have gotten into it and added it to their line. People that had floor lines have added additional floor lines to take up the slack that the EWP is leaving. And some floor truss manufacturers are now out like 15 to 17 weeks. I mean, just 4 months to get a truss. I mean, to get your floor system in. So you really got to plan ahead. And the primary product used in floor trusses is 2x4s, either number 2 or number 1 or MSR and number 3 for low grade for webbing. So Southern Pine 2x4s are probably the hottest item in the market today, and we can see that the prices at midweek were flat. So even and the reason there is everybody's got everything bought. You're out 17 weeks. You get basically the truss industry is short 2x4s because they can't hold 17 weeks worth of inventory, and they've got 17.
Right, I know some of those guys in the truss industry that have stuff sold out into next year.
Yeah.
So
and they admittedly they can't buy it and they can't get it committed, and nobody's going to commit a price that long, so they're really exposed. So I hope you guys that are in the floor truss business or truss business that you're quoting out that far, you got some kind of tied to your pricing tied to the market.
Yeah, I do know a group of people that can do swaps on those, which I was very familiar with in the past. So they can actually lock the price in on Southern Yellow Pine for out to almost 18 months on that. So that's a good one. If anybody ever needs to know or have me connect them with those people, I can do that. Judy was asking a question up here, and this is a great one, Matt, because you deal with a lot of people on this. Do you feel the market will take a larger position with inventories and take their Jan Feb needs in November and December? And I think, are you already seeing that, Matt? I think some people may have already bought their needs.
I think that where prices are, where they've come from, as soon as the space becomes available, I think on the supply side, and I call the supply side everywhere between the builder and the dealer, I mean the producer, and now you can add into that probably multifamily people as well. Everybody that can buy wood and store it at less than $500 is going to do it as soon as they possibly can, which is going to set us up for possibly a really tricky 2021. The market, 2022, the market could get overbought really early next year if people start doing what Judy's talking about, and I think they probably will.
Yeah,
because of the fear of of the curtailments making prices go higher, or what if nobody's talking about COVID, but I mean it's worse. Hospitalizations or worse. Deaths are not as bad, but the contagion and the necessity of confinement or containment is just as well. You still have to have you had 2 week quarantine no matter what, unless you've had a shot. The quarantines are all over the place, and it's gonna choke down demand and the ability and supply. So it's gonna be we're not done with that thing yet. So I just think we gotta.
Let's bring up the Canadian one. So this one is really interesting to me because we were chatting about this yesterday. So we're going in expiration. I don't want to confuse some people too much, but the CME is almost $100 over the spot cash price of 4-inch. And you would have think with that announcement yesterday, it would have come up there, but it's still sitting there. So how is that basis going to come in the next 30 days, Matt?
Well, I think what's happening is that other than lumber people are making the market go up. The algos and the hedge funds that are rolling from September to November that wanted to be long. These hedge funds that are always long are selling September and buying the November. It's making the November go up. And people that are just getting out of the shorts, they're just getting out of September because they're running out of time. We got one more week before there are no limits on the September contract, and that.
Actually, we have 2 weeks before that thing expires almost, and you're that wide.
Yeah, you really got 3 weeks, but you got 1 week before you get to be no limits. But I don't see how, with the amount of volume, if you just ask everybody here, who here is prepared to buy a 25% increase in their inventory?
Well, my
And I,
question is, why wouldn't a mill take advantage of $100 1,000 and sell for their shareholders if that's the case?
they may be, they may be sniffling there with a little bit here and there,
I'm
but
guessing they are too. Yeah.
the only people that you're really down to just probably 3 or 4 mills that can even play the game. They basically have to be Western Canadian SPF and British Columbia. There's some places in the Pacific Northwest that can participate, but they usually don't. But
Yeah, there. You know what? That's a good point, Matt. These hemp. I know there's about 4 or 5 different inland hemp fir mills that actually can ship on the contract, and if it's a big premium for them, they should look at that.
yeah, they're typically don't do it. Typically, the deliveries are made by Western Canadian. It used to be just primarily Canfor and West Fraser, and West Fraser's gotten out of making deliveries too. So
Now, wholesalers can do it too. Now, I think that's one thing people forget about the CME contract. You don't have to be a mill to make a delivery. You can actually be somebody else as long as you have the right tele. You can ship into it. I'm pretty sure.
I didn't know that was the case. I thought you had to be a
No,
producer
I
to ship.
remember that's something the CME pushed. I think, and again, I could be wrong on this, and it needs to be verified. But I think if you're a wholesaler, you can deliver into it also. You just have to check everything and make sure it hits all the right. It would hit all the right dates and so forth, right?
Yeah, and but you still have to ship it from the same specifics that are in the contract from that geographical area. You're still going to have to buy it from the mills that can make deliveries. So it's still a limited number of people that can.
Yeah. For sure. So this is a great. This is going to be a fun one to watch, man. I mean, this is going to be really interesting because it gets that's pretty wide. Dry Doug fir and U.S. species are. What I really would like to do is anything on dry or green that you're seeing at all.
It's just following Western SPF. Matt says that every time. He says whatever Canadian SPF does, dry fir follows, and green is kind of unique because it's got a captive audience that's basically just Southern California over to Las Vegas and Phoenix. And it's just the production there's just not a lot of production. And when those guys are not buying, it crashes like crazy. But typically we'll see in a market like this, green will lead us up because those markets are so big and they can consume all that green Doug fir in a heartbeat. So I wouldn't be surprised to see green make the first bounce. It was at such a big premium to dry several months ago. Now it's coughed up all that premium, and now it's back to a discount. You can see over I think tuba 10s, tuba 12 still a little premium to dry. And that has to do with EWP, but the tuba 4, tuba 6, tuba 8 are at a discount to dry, so they're back to tradable levels.
Let's go into the OSB chart. I love looking at this one. So this is one that I think actually printed up this week. It traded down to numbers that where people went out and did blocks with people really inexpensively, and then it kind of which nobody ever sees unless you're in a certain group of people sometimes. But we're having people on our platform listing OSB and selling below a lot of these listed numbers, right? Because they have excess inventory they want to move off. But it is really an item like corn, right? Where it just is produced everywhere and pretty much is fungible anywhere, right? And it's interesting. It's interesting how that one is trading, and it's really become one of the most successful items on our platform to trade, right?
Well, it's interesting too, just to hear conversations locally among contractors. And a guy came and gave my wife a bid on repairing a roof, and he says, well, it's going to be expensive because the price of OSB is $40 a sheet now.
My brother-in-law said that 2 or 3 weeks ago. He thought it was still $40 or $50 a sheet.
That's what I said. I said, here's the deal, honey. We're not going to fix that roof till October because the replacement cost is $15 a sheet. So your guy's just not aware of what's going on in the market because he doesn't see it. Even though the price is down from $50 a sheet to $40 a sheet at Lowe's and Home Depot, it's still 3 times what they're paying for it.
Yeah, no, I think if people go and look now, I think most of those big stores have adjusted their numbers down, and that's more people just not understanding. There's a lag in the industry between the production, consumption, middle side, and the end user where they get information, right? Many of them still think the price is up. You talk to anybody now, when you jump in your Uber and your Uber driver tells you it's time to sell lumber, that's when you want to buy it, right?
Yep, that's it.
So
Hey,
that's
let's talk. I want to talk a minute about before we get too far along. Why mill curtailments are bearish and not bullish.
yeah. Go ahead.
Run
Go
out
ahead.
of time.
Go ahead, Matt.
Well, I just wonder if you think about you from the perspective of yourself, whatever side of the business that you're in, the mills are they're gonna shut down or curtail. I'm not gonna say shut down. They're curtail not because of price, but because they just don't have any space anymore. And the reason that happens, it's not because they're losing money, it's because they don't have anywhere to ship it. So it's like if you think about if you know that if you had the thought that the curtailments were going to be bullish for the market, and you're the mill, and you think, well, I'm going to pull some of my production off the market so I can help firm up the market. Do you want to have a yard full of lumber or a yard empty of lumber? If somebody tells you the market's going to go up for some whatever reason, the first thing you want to do is make all you can make, and then do your curtailment. But the curtailment may be bullish for prices on the rumor that they're going to curtail, but the reason that they're curtailing is they don't have any other option. They have to, which is not bullish for the market. It's bearish. It's just a confirmation the market is oversupplied and out of balance, and before prices can really take off and start to go up, that balance has to kick in. And so what I think we're going to see do is we're going to have the mills just dial it back a notch until they feel it. They find that spot of equilibrium, not just slamming things off and saying, okay, all of a sudden we've got no more wood and we can't ship for 4 weeks. We're sold out and we're not going to make it for 2 weeks. And I don't think we're going to see that. I think we see more of a dial back like Canfor is doing, going back from 100% to 80%, back to 90%, back to 80%, just knocking off that extra, like you said earlier, just taking just a little bit of squeeze to get it back in line, but not really just a complete chop.
This wasn't my thought. This was Matt and Greg's yesterday. Look, when we got to $1,700 a thousand, everybody figures out how to make that little bit of extra wood. When you drop down to $400 a thousand, we can argue about the cost of production and how logs go up and all that. Everybody figures out how to take that little incremental amount off the market. And that's what we're seeing right now. Yeah. Kelvin Johnson said something interesting here. Box stores in Canada are still at $45 for 7/16. And that's why our consumer is still staying away from it. How can they be at $45 still in Canada on 7/16?
They're still $40 here in the Carolinas.
I don't even understand that. It's a head scratcher to me, right? But that's exactly why large consumers are trying to figure out how to buy larger volumes of lumber outside of different places, because it only makes sense, right? I mean, if you're paying $45 for it and you can find a whole truckload at $12 and take a whole truckload, you figure out a way to make it work, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's great information, Calvin. I appreciate that. And Kyle, thanks. You said that's correct on the CME delivery. Again, you need to find that out. But I remember when I was 2 years ago, that was one of the things that people were trying to promote is, hey, you don't just have to be a mill to deliver futures. Anybody can. Obviously, you have to be connected with the mill pretty good because you want to make sure it ships on time and you get the right tally. Matt, that's really good. I do want to look at the framing composite index again, because home building is still going great, and home builders are still moving stuff off, and new and existing looked pretty good. I know there's little segments that if you engross yourself in YouTube right now, there's people out there telling that the housing market is rolling over, but I don't see that from the pig farm I live in.
No, that's just looking at data that says that you look at housing starts were down, 1%, 1.6% or something like that, and that's insignificant. But and keep in mind the reason why housing sales and starts are not down because of lack of buyers' interest and willingness. It's down because the builders are intentionally reeling it in themselves to get better control of their cost going forward. They could because look at permits. Permits were actually up a little bit higher, so it kind of lets you know the builders rolled it back. They tried to roll it back a little bit, but now they're kind of going back the other way again, back towards taking a little more permits out. So they don't want to lose. It's almost like they didn't want to. They didn't really want to get locked into 12 months worth of order file at $1,700, but at $400, they're not so worried about having a 12-month order file. So
what I said, Judy just put something up here. $49 at HD Vancouver. So what the theme is here, and I tell people, users on the MX platform that call us saying that they're hearing lumber's trading cheaper and they can buy volume, go out and don't just listen to your first person that you bought lumber from for the last 10 years. Go out and check prices and figure out how you can do better for yourself. You owe it to yourself to do that, and at least have something, get on the MX platform and have something that you can look at what the sell prices of these items every day. So you at least can lean on our number. That's what we want people to do. We fully believe as you lean on our number, that bid ask spread will close, and pretty soon we can be doing a lot more business together. So, Matt, we're kind of up against our half an hour. If anybody has any questions, they can put them up here. Otherwise, that goes fast. That was a lot of fun. Do you got anything you want to finish up with, Matt?
Something that's kind of off topic is everybody. The primary thing that keeps you, if you're trying to buy a mill direct or expand your business, the most important thing you got to do these days, guys, is you've got to pay your bills on time. Credit has gotten to be so tight and hard to come by. The mills and wholesalers are very quick to cut you off if you get 30 days on your bills. And I know this kind of out of the realm of what we usually talk about, but I've seen some things happen this week that the mills are just really on the edge of making sure that they're hesitant to take new customers, and especially from the building side, if you guys are trying to crack in and get with mills, it's imperative that they understand that you will discount your bills, you will pay on time, and everybody's here to make money, so just don't overlook that very important part of the business.
Yeah, and then look, there's some people out there that I've worked with before, like Kyle's on the call. These guys do a great job over at Sherwood doing a lot of their long-term forward pricing. So when some of these big shops are looking to do this long-term forward pricing, they're pretty much top shelf on doing that. So what I'm saying is look for other options, like guys like Kyle at Sherwood and stuff for pricing out and getting stuff longer. Look for different options of different ways that you haven't done it in the past. And if you need any information on where you can get a hold of people on that, call Matt or call myself, and we'll do what we can to help you out there. Again, thank you everybody for showing up. I appreciate it. We'll look forward to seeing you next week on the show, and have your questions ready, and hope you all have a great weekend.
Thanks for coming.
All right, thanks.